push-ups. I've been doing sit-ups. I've been doing chin-ups. I've been doing pull-ups. I threw up once, but I'm okay now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the Ysn Power Hour. DJ Oakley with you. Appreciate you hanging out with us here today. Got a good show for you. I'm not going to tell you who the guest is, but I'm going to tell you that I'm hoping they show up. I'm so tired of getting stood up. But if they do show up, it's going to be a great conversation. So we'll see if that shakes out. A lot to talk about today. Big dogs were released this morning. It's a great day for YSN when we get big dogs and kids acknowledged once again for their talents on and off the floor, and it's certainly when we can get them acknowledged for the votes that they bring in. We'll get you up to date on who the winners are on week one of the Big Dogs of the Valley, brought to you by Baird Brothers in just a moment. But first, as we do each and every show, we start off with On This Day in Sports History. All right, so on this day in sports history, one of the the low-key better baseball players of all my childhood. On this day in sports history, 1987, Kirby Puckett goes 6 for 6 with 2 home runs in the Minnesota's 10-6 win over Milwaukee. Kirby Puckett had one of those, what would kids call it nowadays? Dad bods, I guess, of baseball. Kirby Puckett, Tony Gwynn, a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker. And that's, I don't want to say he gave baseball a bad name, because those dudes, I mean, you're talking about two low-key best to ever do it, right? And from a hit perspective, Tony Gwynn, I mean, the stats just keep coming out on him, and may he rest in peace. Way too soon did he pass away. But Kirby Puckett is a name that is Kirby dead too? I think Kirby excuse me. Kirby Puckett might have passed away too. This might be a sad start to the Power Hour today. Is he? Yeah, he did. He died in 2006. Oh, my goodness. So there you have it. I mean, two guys who swinging it with the best of them, gone too soon. I didn't even think of that prior to this on this day in sports history. Kirby Puckett lost in 2006. Crazy. So I 6 for 6, going 6 for 6 in a game. Doing anything 6 times in any game is incredible to me. 6 3-pointers, 6 goals. I mean, doing anything 6 times is incredible. So Kirby Puckett, hats off to you, my friend, for doing 6 for 6, going 6 for 6 on this day in sports history in the ripe old year of 1987. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we roll out the YSN red carpet for one of the greatest of all time. And that is not just a figure of my imagination. This is a legit dude who is the GOAT. A lot of fanfare from this area. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Powers is here. Jimmy, can you hear me? You there? I see you now. You good?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm well, man. It's a long time no see. How the hell are you?
Well, somebody in their infinite wisdom this summer decided to expand his skill set a little bit. So I am sitting here in my office in Central West End, St. Louis, putting schedules together as an athletic director now. So having a good time with it, really enjoying the experience. But the cool thing is I'm still doing all my media stuff down here, which is still a lot of fun.
Yeah, talk to me about that. I mean, how did the athletic director position come to be, and why in the world in today's day and age would you ever take that on?
Well, some of my best friends are athletic directors, and in my 18 plus years down here in St. Louis, I've met some terrific individuals. And this past May, I was actually at the state track meet, and I get a phone call from the president here at Rosada Kane, and she's like, "Hey, your name came up in a few conversations. Would you be interested in sitting down and chatting with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know, with all the other stuff that I'm doing, I didn't want to give that up, but this kind of intrigued me a little bit." And so we sat down, and back in early June, they made an offer, and here we are, and we're having a blast with it. We're having a lot of fun. We got a lot of great kids here. It's an all-girls school, private school here in St. Louis. Some real good tradition with their soccer teams and their volleyball teams, and that's so it's a great opportunity for me. But like I said, the nice thing is I don't have to be here all day every day.
Right.
I can work from home in the mornings, and that's where I do the stuff. All my high school coverage with Dan McLaughlin and his website, some of the other things that I'm doing, and then obviously, the Fox affiliate here on Friday nights at 10:10 with their prep coverage and some of the NCAA stuff that I'm still able to do. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, so to say. It lets me expand a little bit some of my skill set, because I've done it all in high school. I mean, I've coached, I've been an official, and now moving into the administrative side, and it seems like that's the natural progression of things.
And that's the crazy thing is you have literally done it all. So let's scale back a little bit and how this old boy got started. Jim, when you think about how you got started in the industry, the broadcasting industry and sports broadcasting, how did it get started for you?
John Caparanus, Bill Gideon, Ron Potesta. Some great guys there. And back in the day, I was doing stats for a couple of different high schools, and doing some coaching here and there. And I got to know John real well, and Bill Gideon from the old days up in Warren. And they asked me, they're like, "Hey, do you want to help out during playoffs when our teams got knocked out and all that stuff?" And really found it intriguing and started to have a little bit more fun with it. And then obviously the old days over in Campbell, right up, from the ball field there, with Poe hosting the morning show. And then I did the afternoon show, and we did a bunch of high school games together. And then moved over to, the other side of the state, other side of the state line with Bobby Greenberg and Mark Slezak and Briggsy and all those guys for a couple years. Doing games, doing sidelines, and just having an absolute blast with it. So when I moved here to St. Louis, coaching down here, it's such a tight knit community in the coaching area. It's very hard if you're not known to get a coaching job. And so it's like, all right, so I just went out and watched games on Friday nights and went out and watched basketball games, and then a year later, my second year here, ran into somebody that was looking for a play-by-play guy for radio. And that kind of started the ball rolling with a bunch of different stuff that, I was doing back then. And now it's morphed to, knowing the right people, doing a great job, being prepared, different things along those lines, to where now I've announced the big school football championship game here in the state of Missouri for the state association. This will be my 12th year in doing that, doing a lot of stuff with them. And once again, being on, Fox 2 on Friday nights is one of their go-to guys when it comes to high school coverage, and just loving the game and loving to give back to the kids and put the spotlight on the kids and put the spotlight on the coaches, because they do so much work, as well as I do, how much work these guys put in. And there's just not enough outlets to get the word out about them. And so, a lot of the things that I've done, it goes back to my roots, and loving sports and loving, how can we promote the kids? And that was the other part of, wanting to try this athletic director, position was, how now can I put the spotlight on these kids sitting in the big chair instead of sitting in my office at home writing about them? How can I directly, affect and impact what they are doing?
What's crazy is and correct me if I'm wrong, you're a Hubbard boy, correct?
I'm a Hubbard boy. Hell yeah.
All right. To YSU.
Yep.
And then you go through all this journey to get you started, and then you end up in St. Louis, Missouri. Right?
Yes.
Walk me through. I mean, night and day, or is it apples to apples?
Night and day. I mean, you got to understand, you move to a big city, you're going to have culture shock right out of the gate. Well, I've lived in the South ever since I moved here in 2004. I've lived in South City, which is just an unbelievable area. If you know St. Louis or you've heard of St. Louis, you've heard of the Hill. I lived right outside the Hill.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it was culture shock at first. And was I homesick for the first maybe year and a half? Absolutely, I was. I would always call home and talk to some of my friends and all that. But you know what? The greatest thing was I met a core group of people down here in that first year and a half, 2 years. And it really, at that point, started to feel like home. It felt comfortable. And as the years went on and, my reputation of how I do work and how I go about things started to make its way down from Youngstown to St. Louis, because you got to remember the Missouri Valley Football Conference. Youngstown State's been a part of it. A lot of those folks knew me from Youngstown State and some of the things I helped out with there. And then, just certain other things, but people started to understand what I was all about. And it started really to make me feel very, more comfortable in what I was doing and how I was going about my business. And I've learned from some unbelievable people. Bob Hannon, I've learned from him. I've learned some stuff. I've learned some stuff from Bobby Greenberg, Poe. I mean, all those guys. And it's kind of been this big mishmash of things that I've learned in the media side of things that I've been able to bring here to St. Louis and really made a difference.
And that's kind of the tie-in is Bob Hannon. He's a huge influencer in my life. I served under him with an internship and then worked with him while I was still going through school. And really, people still kind of clamor for Bob, especially on the Penguin broadcast. They still love him. But he was the owner of Friday Night Sports in the Valley, and he demanded perfection. And I think that's something you and I kind of taken to heart in what we do every day is you want to be perfect for these kids because there's opportunity out there and they want to be perfect on the field or the court.
Right, exactly, without a doubt. I remember, I think it was for 2 years that I would go in on Friday nights and Bob would send me out with one of the photogs and, chart plays and, help build the highlights and all that stuff. And just watch how he does everything on a Friday night. And it was him, Billy Castavinte, and some great photographers, but yeah, we're putting on a show and we're putting on a show for these kids. Mm-hmm. And I brought that here, when we first started doing radio down here, and it'll blow your mind that there's not a radio station in St. Louis that covers football on Friday nights.
Wow.
My core group, my buddies with the high school sports caravan, when we started that, we were with a local station, and then it just got to be too expensive. They didn't want any part of it anymore. But, that was me on Friday nights. I mean, I took what I learned from Bob and, I brought that to how we were doing everything from our studio show. I knew the games were going to be great because there's two guys down here in St. Louis that are amongst the best that I've ever worked with and listened to. But then, I was in the studio, and I had to juggle, updates, make sure our producers were getting everything that they needed to get done, making sure we were cutting highlights. And they knew that this is how I wanted it. And because of what I learned from Bob and what I learned from Bobby Greenberg over on the other side, and Sharon and Farrell with the stuff that I did with him, because the kids deserve it. The kids deserve to have the best coverage absolutely possible. Because if they don't get that, what are we doing? How are we doing them a service? Right. And that's kind of where, I am right now with it. And the stuff that I am currently doing, in the state championships, I mean, people sit there, I'll get out to Columbia the Friday after Thanksgiving, and I literally lock myself in a room, in my hotel room. I've got my screen, I've got my laptop, and I'm sitting there watching film of the two teams that are playing in the state champion. I take it like it's an NFL game or a big-time college game, because for a state championship, that's what those kids deserve.
That's incredible. So I guess one of my biggest questions is when you make the jump from Youngstown, Ohio, and Western Pennsylvania to St. Louis, we have this stigma in Youngstown that we do everything better than everybody else, and nobody's going to tell us different. What was it like for you to take in kind of the different sports that St. Louis and Missouri had to offer in comparison to Ohio and Western Pennsylvania? What was it like for you?
The first couple of years was extremely hard, because I was so used to, what Youngstown was all about and what Northeast Ohio was all about, and that's being a football hotbed.
Mm-hmm.
But then you come to St. Louis, and number one, here's one of the biggest differences. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know there have been a few other private schools that have opened up back in Northeast Ohio, but back in my day, it was Mooney, it was Ursuline, it was Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
You come to St. Louis, you have all boys schools, all girls schools, co-ed schools. St. Louis has the most private educational institutions in one city in the nation. And I had to get used to that. I had to wrap my head around, okay, DeSmet Jesuit, what is that? Is that an all boys school? St. Joe's Academy, is that an all girl? It took me so long to, kind of figure all that stuff out, when all I was used to was Mooney, winning in football all the time, Ursuline, battling them in some of the great battles over at Stambaugh Stadium, and Kennedy, on the basketball and baseball side. So the transition was tough, but when push comes to shove, it's still a game. It's still the kids. It's still them practicing and getting better and going out there. And to this day, everybody asks me, well, what's better? Is Ohio football better, or is Missouri football better? And right now, honestly, it's neck and neck.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day, it was all Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
But the level of football that has really emerged here in the St. Louis area over the last 5 to 7 years has just been unbelievable. With some of the kids that have played, I know two of our big juggernauts played out at Hall of Fame Stadium this past weekend, CBC and East St. Louis. CBC is the defending big school champion here in Missouri. East St. Louis lost in just one of the best high school games you're ever going to see over on the Illinois side in the 7A championship game. East St. Louis has got kids. I mean, they average at least 6-7 D1 kids a year.
Oh my gosh.
Not in 4 or 5 years, a year. They're pumping out those types of kids. The St. Louis side, and one of the things on my podcast that I talk about with a lot of the coaches is just how it's exploded here in St. Louis. Because when I first moved here, we'd maybe get, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 kids signing D1. Now, oh my gosh, we're talking 4 or 5 kids on a team that are playing D1. They're going to go D1, going to go to different things. I mean, Ohio State, Cameron Babb, great kid that I got a chance to watch over here, at CBC. You talk about some of the other, big times, performers. I know Adrian Claiborne played for the Cleveland Browns for a couple years. I had a chance to watch him play. Mm-hmm. Jeremy Macklin, who's now a coach here, I watched him at Turkey Day. I mean, that's been kind of the cool thing for me, is seeing these guys, going full circle, basically.
So, okay, you talk about private schools and all the private schools that are there in St. Louis. Do they kind of have the same conversations that we do over here when, they win championships? It's, oh, well, they're a private school. They recruit, they do that. Does that conversation happen over there as well?
Take it from here.
Yeah.
And amplify it. At a Youngstown, okay, Kennedy wins a football championship. Yeah, they recruit, and they kind of leave it at that. CBC wins the state championship here in Missouri. It's like warning bells are going off all over the place. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, it's a topic every year that comes up. They've tried to push through the public-private thing, and it's not going to fail. It's not going to work. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's there's times where it's the wild, wild west down here. It really is with a lot of the stuff that goes on and all that. And the state association tries to do the best they can, but you still have that stigmatism. It's private school. They get the best of the best and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, there's some really good public schools, here in Missouri, and I know back in Ohio as well, that do very well. And if they win, do you hear the same comments being made, so to say? You don't. You hear crickets, basically. But here in Missouri, I mean, every sport, it doesn't matter if it's football, girls basketball, Incarnate Word Academy, they've won 6 straight big school state championships. They're going to come into this winter, I believe, on a 69-game winning streak. They haven't lost in 3 years.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, soccer, we've had, the St. Louis side has some of the best soccer that you are ever going to see. The championship game last year for the big schools on the girls' side, I felt like I was sitting there watching a Division I soccer match. And it goes 0-0, 2 overtimes, and they got to settle it on the dot in PKs. I mean, I felt so bad for the kids because they played. I mean, it was one of the best soccer games that I've ever seen.
I love PKs. I'm just going to be straight with you. I'm a huge penalty kick. I'm a huge, shootout kind of guy. And that's my favorite part of hockey and soccer at the same time. So if we can settle it via PK, I'm good.
And once again, regular season, I love, but gosh, with Nerix Hall and St. Dominic, just the way they went at it for, 80, 100 minutes. You just hated to see anybody lose at that point. But once again, though, for a soccer championship game, you had nearly 5,000 people there, DJ. I mean, the atmosphere was just, it was amazing. It was one of the best things that I've seen, especially coming out of COVID. And that was the biggest thing about it. It was really the first championship that the state of Missouri had to where there wasn't hardly, any protocols when it came to COVID and all that stuff. And then you put these two teams on the pitch on a Saturday night at the soccer park. It was just unbelievable. And like I said, 5,000 people, and they were hanging off the side of the bleachers. I mean, it was just an incredible sight.
Before we get to the next question, a member of yesteryear, you can say. My guy, your guy, Mike A, says as well.
I coached him in 7th grade at Struthers. It was my second coaching stop back home. My first year I coached up at Niles with Tony Augustine, and then Joe Fuelline hired me over at Struthers for a year, and then went over to Lowellville with Bert Stellers for a couple years. Then me and Andy Saxon and Robin Jameson. I mean, Andy's still there. Andy, I was talking to Bob Krasancic a couple weeks ago, and we were trying to figure out who was going to retire first from coaching, Bob up at Menor or Sax at Girard. And Bob said, I think Sax is going to beat me. But I mean, the teams that we had at Girard and our coaching staff, Andy, I don't think Andy gets enough credit. I really don't. I mean, Andy is just an unbelievable coach, and he cares about those kids. And my coaching side, I learned so much from Andy. I learned so much from a lot of people. But, coaching with Andy and Robin was just unbelievable. And it was so much fun. We had a blast with it. And then, I went over with Roy Nard at Mooney for a year when I was trying to take my hiatus from coaching, so to say. And then went with John Ritz to Liberty. Yep. And then I took over the Lordstown program. And it was, I had the opportunity here in St. Louis and was, just able to take it and run with it. But yeah, I mean, Mike A and that group at Struthers, I'm still friends with a lot of those guys on Facebook. And it's so cool that I'm able to do that with a bunch of kids that I coached back in 7th grade.
He just went on and on about you and raved about you. And I think we both share that sentiment as you are the best. So Jimmy, let's break this down. You are one of the few guys that has now been in administration. You've been in a coaching role and you've been in a broadcasting role, all in sports. What are some of the highs and lows of all those? And is there anyone that you'd pick over the other?
Gosh, I mean, right now, being an administrator, it's still new, so to say, but I'm having a blast with it. I mean, it's a big learning curve. I mean, thank goodness I had the experience as a coach. Thank goodness I had the media experience. And also, you got to remember, I still referee volleyball and basketball every now and then.
Oh,
So
wow.
you know,
Yeah.
I've had I've had all those experiences, and I knew what athletic directors were going through. Now, if I would have been offered this job 2 years ago in the midst of COVID, I would have absolutely said no.
I
No
think we
questions
all
asked.
would, right?
I think everybody would have.
Yeah.
But highs and lows, my gosh, I mean, there's just so many of them. Coaching wise, just seeing the kids being successful. I mean, that's been the biggest part of it is, kids like Mike and Jeff DeCellis, who's doing such a great job as an umpire, umpiring national stuff. Those guys. And then I look back at some of the girls that I coached over at Girard and to see their success. I mean, if you do it for the right reasons as a coach, and you look back and you see the success of the kids that you coached, you know what? They may not admit it, but you had a little bit to do with that. And that's been the coolest thing. And, seeing all these kids grow up and, now they're having kids and, just you kind of see that. And so that's been kind of the really, really good side of every part of what I've been able to do. Really the lows, obviously you hate losing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, we used to take losing so personal when I was with Andy and Robin over at Girard, especially, those were the years that Ursuline had just those unbelievable girls basketball teams with Courtney and all those great kids. And, we would sit there trying to figure out how can we beat them? What can we do? I mean, we would sit up all night watching film and all that kind of stuff and just couldn't figure it out. And it's partly because it was a great team. We had a great team. It's just, that was just that time to where it was their time. And sometimes when you get a school and you get a team that it's their time, it's awfully tough to do things. But, I think, the low side of it is just, right now, and I hate to say it, and we're seeing it here in St. Louis in a big fashion. This past Friday night, there was a game that got called in the second quarter because fans decided to go off the deep end and start fighting.
Oh boy.
There was a game on Saturday afternoon, and this is an afternoon game, gunshots outside in the parking lot. We see what's going on with the refereeing situation. And just not here in Missouri, just not there in Ohio. This is a nationwide issue. The way that AAU parents are treating these officials. The way coaches treat officials at times. And I'm not going to say I was a choir boy back in the day when I coached when it came to officials. I can name a few guys that used to hate working my games, and I used to hate having them on my games because it would be nonstop. And thank goodness I didn't get a lot of technicals. I never got thrown out of a game either. So, but I mean, that's been the low part of it as of late is just this fan behavior and the student behavior and things like that, because there's going to be a point, and I say this a lot down here in St. Louis, we're going to see a ton of Thursday night football games.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to, there's maybe one or two here and there on a Thursday night. We're going to see almost a full schedule on Thursday night because there's just not going to be enough officials. And I know the schools are trying to do everything they can. I know I've been, and this is part of the AD thing, we've been on emails for the last day and a half talking about how we can work together collectively as a group of administrators to try and figure out how we can make it safe for fans to come to games without fights breaking out. And that's been the sad part of everything over the last, and I hate to say it, it's just bubbled over the last couple of years because I really haven't had a lot of low points in what I've done and all that stuff. But seeing what's going on right now, that's the part that makes me sad. And I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Amen. I mean, it's been, and it's hard to even put a finger on where it started. It's not a generational problem. It just kind of snuck its head up. Another thing, we talked about the referees and the officials. Another thing I want to talk about is this NIL. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar. Ohio had the chance to adopt it in the high school level. And
I saw that.
So Pennsylvania accepted it. Has Missouri talked about it at all? I mean, is this something that you think would be beneficial or detrimental to high school athletes?
I'm going to flat out say it. I think it's going to be the biggest detriment ever to high school sports. I get it. I understand. But this is something we cannot go down that slippery slope like NCAA has, because we've already started to see the casualties that NIL has had happen with that. I mean, you're seeing, I believe the number in the portal was 1,100 football players were still in the transfer portal. And as of right now, there's still 900 looking for someplace to play. A lot of it has to do with NIL. What do you do in a locker room to where, and there's 1,000 examples that you could throw out there, but you have somebody that's getting a big NIL deal, but then you've got somebody that's getting absolutely nothing, but working just as hard as that person is out on the practice field. How do you take that rift from a locker room away? You can't. It's nearly impossible. Now you trickle that down to high school. Coaches aren't equipped to be able to deal with that. I mean, you're seeing colleges naming staff members as NIL advisors and collectives and this, that, and the other thing. High schools don't have that money. I mean, shoot, everybody's still fighting a fight to get the 3-point clock in basketball. And one of the main reasons that schools won't buy it is because it costs too much money between buying the equipment, training somebody to run it, and then paying somebody to do it every night for a basketball game. How are you going to do NIL if you're a state association and try and have these schools hire somebody or have somebody be in charge of making sure that NIL is being done the right way? Schools can't afford that. I mean, we're screaming for teachers, and you're going to throw this layer on top of how everybody is screaming for educators, when we should be really worrying about teaching our kids so they can get to the next level instead of trying to incentivize things that way so they're not going to be ready for the next level.
I think that's a great point. I never even thought about that. You see these coaches that are having a tough time having college players make more than they do on an annual basis.
Yeah.
How would teachers feel if their students are making more than they are on an annual basis because they're playing high school sports? I never even thought about that. That would be, that's another layer to that onion. And
absolutely.
That'd be terrible. I mean, as a teacher, it'd be frustrating, because the kids won't listen to you if he's already making more money than you are,
and that's the thing. I mean, and I hate to say it, but that's the bottom line. We're screaming for teachers right now. And, people don't understand that, if there's a conversation here in Missouri going on to incentivize teachers. Okay, we'll do 4-day school weeks. What does that really do? It puts a Band-Aid on it. We've got to pay the teachers more. And the one good thing here in Missouri is that the state finally, the government and the governor finally made it okay. Teachers are going to be paid, I believe the number is $35,000 a year. You can't dip below that. I know there was a lot of starting salaries for teachers. When I first moved here, they were around $25,000 a year. They had to coach 3 sports in order to make ends meet. But at least now there's that minimum there. So that's starting things. But once again, though, you get a lot of these kids in college and they're hearing everything that's going on in the high schools. And the bad part, too, is we're coming out of COVID and we know what kind of 3-ring circus it's been for the last 2+ years, with dealing with COVID and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
A lot of these kids don't want to get in education. They want to go in other directions and do other things. And I get that. But how are we going to get the youth right now to where me and you are, where other people are, without those teachers?
We're here with Jimmy Powers, local legend. Starting from the ground up, and now you're taking over Missouri, and we're so proud of you, man. A couple more questions for you before we let you get out of here. What do you miss most about the area here in Youngstown and in the Mahoning Valley?
What, the food, the people? In St. Louis, we have this thing called thin crust pizza.
Okay.
It is the worst pizza ever known to man. Give me Avalon any day of the week.
I love it.
Give me Bellacita or Belleria any day of the week. Give me Inner Circle wings any day of the week. Give me a little Villa wings.
Right? You have barbecue.
Oh, we got now. I will say this: we got phenomenal barbecue here.
Yeah.
there's some outstanding places. But, food-wise, Italian Fest was either going on a couple weeks ago or it's coming up real soon. I used to miss I miss, Mount Carmel and all that stuff. I mean, just, those kind of things. You miss those kind of things. I miss going to games at YSU. There was a point I didn't miss a home game at Youngstown State for so many years. But now, I still do some work with the Valley, and I get to watch the games now on ESPN Plus and the job that they've done. And I wish Doug, I got to know Doug while we were in college, and I hope the best for him. I know he can get that ship righted and going in some great directions, at Youngstown State. But, those are some of the things that I miss. I mean, and obviously I miss a lot of my friends. I miss seeing Bobby all the time. I miss, Bob Greenberg, hanging out with him on a Sunday afternoon while the Steelers are playing. And, it's just, the friendships that I built for so many years, back home. Those are some of the things. But my gosh, I give me some thick crust pizza. I just need that. I need that. I mean, there's a couple places here that are good, but I just need that thick crust.
I love it. How often do you get back to the Valley?
I have not, with everything that's been going on, it's been a little while since I've gotten back. My hope is we have a Valley game of the week at the right at the end of the season. And I'm hoping to be able to make that trip back with Mike Kern and the crew for the production for that game and work that game and all that. If not, I'm definitely going to get back over Christmas break. With what I've got going here now, we don't have anything over Christmas break, which is awesome. And then, I get to go to Frisco for the FCS championship that first week of January. So my hope is to try and get back, between Christmas and New Year's for a few days just to say hey to everybody. Because finally, I've got a little bit of time to breathe.
Well, dude, we are so incredibly proud of you. I can't thank you enough for taking out some time and talking to us and catching up and shooting the breeze a little bit. Keep doing what you're doing. Your impact is certainly, maybe you're not here in person, but your impact is felt here, and we're all just trying to play catch up with you, man. We're all appreciative for everything that you do and everything that you've done.
Well, and I've told you this, in our DMs on Facebook, what you guys have done has just been unbelievable. The coverage that YSN has put together, I wish we had it back in the day when I was there. It's just unbelievable. And, what you guys are doing and really putting a spotlight on kids. And that's the cool thing, too, with what I get to do with Dan McLaughlin and his website. For those that don't know Dan, he's he's a play-by-play guy for the St. Louis Cardinals on Bally's Midwest. And he has a great website called scoopswithdannymac.com. And he approached me and was like, I want to put free content up. And I said, I'm in. And so every day I'm writing content, putting a spotlight on our kids and all that stuff, because there's not enough of that coverage. We don't have a lot of that here in St. Louis, but I love what you guys are doing. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep promoting those kids. Keep a lot of my cohorts in crime, in check for me. If you do a Gerard game, smack sacks in the back of the head for me. Harass those guys any way you can, because I don't get a chance to do it on a daily basis.
Jim, we're so thankful for you. Thanks again for stopping by. You're welcome here anytime, and keep doing good things out there, man. I know that you got those Ohio roots, and nobody's going to outwork you, so keep doing it.
Hey, I'm telling you right now, Ohio State by 5 touchdowns against Notre Dame. I've already called that shot. So there we go.
There he goes. Jim Powers, the legend. We'll be back right after this on the Ysn Power Hour.
It's a new year at Acura of Boardman and Boardman Mitsubishi with huge savings on over 350 fully inspected vehicles. We have cars, trucks, SUVs, minivans, and work vehicles. We don't have it, our team will find it. We aim for 100% credit approval with payments as low as $99 per month. And as always, we'll pay top dollar for your trade. For a great vehicle and a great experience, come see why everyone is stopping by at Acura Boardman and Boardman Mitsubishi.
You're not waiting to see what the world has in store for you. It's more about what you have in store for the world. All you need is the opportunity. All you need are the resources of a large university and the advantages of a personalized academic setting, where you can experience new worlds in the arts and sciences, business, and education, and make them your own. We are where you shape your future. We are Youngstown State University, and proud.
Being able to have success on the football field and the basketball court and just every aspect of, my sports career is now documented. You know, one of the greatest things about high school sports is to be able to talk about it for the rest of your life, and to look back on the days with my buddies whenever we had some battles, whether it was with, you know, our rival or just another game. And I could go back and look at it, and you know, not only myself but my family members, my teammates, and it's something that will last a lifetime. My name is Parker Sherry, and my sports network is your sports network.
It's storm season.
I think we're under the gun for some heavy storms over the next couple of hours.
And Storm Tracker 21 is ready.
This is probably the one we're keeping a closer eye on.
On air.
And locally, we're going to have a lot of eyes on our area.
Online.
All right, let's talk high-risk futurecast and the timing of this weather.
On social media and on our app.
Notice we'll have scattered showers on Thursday.
Stay ready with Storm Tracker 21.
The severe weather threat now through around sunset this evening.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the YSN Power Hour. DJ Oakley with you. Just had a great interview with Jim Powers, who, again, Hubbard boy, goes to Youngstown State, does so much here in the Valley from a media standpoint. And one of the guys that, you know, he talked about Bob Hannon a lot. He talked about Bill Castrovince. He talked about Poe. He talked about John Caporanis, some of the names you've heard here for decades. But what I will tell you about Jim Powers is that when we started, he was one of our biggest advocates. He was the guy that said, keep going, keep, you know, one shovel at a time into that mountain. And, you know, we'll move it. And we have, you know, we're on to the next mountain, right? But he was a guy that was just integral in us in our growth. And sometimes, you know, especially when building a business is the same as raising a child, in the fact that, you know, you have to be patient with it. You have to, you can't ask a 3-day-old to be walking and being able to communicate with you. Sometimes you have to baby it until it can crawl, until it can walk, until it can run. And you're still babying it 20 years later, still paying bills and making sure that it's got somebody that has a roof over its head and things of that nature. It's very similar. And as I go through kind of both at the same time, it's people like Jim Powers that are very appreciated along the way, because it's easy to say, I can't do this. It's easy to say, I won't do this because it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. It's not as fun. Like, there's nights that doing a high school game is, believe it or not, it is not the thing that you want to do, because you have other commitments. You have other things in your life that are going on, and you have a wife and kids at home, and you have, other things. Our announcers have other things they want to do. And sometimes you're not connected to that team. A lot of times you are. Sometimes you're not. It's guys like Jim Powers, and the list can go forever, that have made our job a little bit more worthwhile. Not because we need a pat on the back. It's sometimes we just need somebody to say, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And Jim Powers has been that guy. So I wanted to make sure that, he had his chance to talk about who he is, what he's done, and why he's done it, because he's done it so well for such a long period of time. And I can't appreciate him enough for everything that he's done for this valley, for Missouri, and certainly in the communication side of sports, because you're talking about a living legend that you just got to see. So thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. We talked about the big dogs. We talked about it being announced today. And if you haven't had a chance to pop on over to ysnlive.com and check out who won the big dogs, well, Tara Lytle of Lakeview is your big dog of the Valley winner for week 1, brought to you by Bear Brothers. Tara is, terrorizing is what her name should be, because she is an absolute phenom on the hardwood. She is a volleyball superstar, and she and Lauren Pallone were going neck and neck in votes, but they're also kind of neck and neck rivals in the NE8, neck and neck rivals, because tonight they square off. I think that's the 1 and 2, if I'm not mistaken, on our power ranking. So somebody's going to be sitting at 3 next week, and You wonder who it's going to be, but Tara gets the first piece of the puzzle solved in winning the Baird Brothers Big Dog of the Valley Week 1 contest in volleyball. Thanks to everybody who voted for her, voted for everybody. It was a close contest. It was within 100 votes. So when you sit there and you say, well, I voted enough, you never know how many votes it's going to come down to. And for that one in particular, it came down to less than 100. I think it was even less than 80 votes, if I'm not mistaken. So you never know what impact you can have. It's a t-shirt, but it's also a great platform, and we put your name in lights a little bit for the success that you had that week. So congratulations to Tara Lytle of Lakeview for being the first Big Dog of the Valley for volleyball this year. On the football side, it wasn't as close. Vinny Ballone has absolutely exploded on the scene here in his senior campaign. 2022, Vinny goes against Columbiana. He goes 6 tutties and, 6 passing tutties and a rushing touchdown. Something ridiculous. I think it was like close to 300 yards passing, 146 yards rushing in that first week. And then he does the exact same thing in week 2 against Campbell. 6 touchdowns through the air, 1 touchdown rushing. And he, by the way of, I think it was like 20,000 votes. He wins your Baird Brothers Big Dog of the Valley for week 1. So here's what I will say. I'm going to get a little bit of Powerade, as they say around here. Here's what I will say about the voting. I'm not going to get on a high horse. So I talked about it today on Running Point with Anthony. I do get a little frustrated because late in every season, we'll get messages from coaches or administrators or parents about how this kid or that kid isn't, shouldn't be player of the week. It's not our determination of player of the week. In fact, we have 6 players of the week each and every week for better part of 10 weeks. So you're looking at essentially 60 players minimum. Sometimes they just don't vote. Sometimes communities just don't vote. We had a young man who I think is well deserving of a win. And I can say that because I've seen him play for the last 3 years and just doesn't get the votes. And it has nothing to do with him being that caliber player that's here and not here. It has everything to do with votes. And people are like, well, it's just a popularity contest. You're right. You're absolutely right. But in that popularity contest, we got 6 student athletes to be seen. And that's the goal. Our goal here, if you haven't figured it out yet, is for our student athletes to have a light shined upon them positively so that they can get, college offers, job offers. They can do better in life. Like, my goal is not to make sure a kid goes D1. That's not our goal. If it happens, awesome. Our goal is to give kids a chance that they otherwise wouldn't have to be seen by people which they otherwise wouldn't. That's our goal at YSN. The biggest argument for, or against, I should say, teams and districts letting us in and doing their games has always been, since day one, you're going to take butts out of the seats, ticket sales out of our hand. Okay. Science can tell you that, technically. But what we've seen is a spike. We've actually done a case study on it, and nothing's affected. In fact, we actually help by promoting the games, so people go because they get excited by watching our shows or watching, or reading our content or seeing something on Facebook. I would argue that we have succeeded in the fact of getting more kids looks to go to college than taking more asses out of the seats. That's a truth. That is a true statement. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. That is what happened. But they don't want to hear that. People don't want to hear that we're helping their kids and there's promotion there. Parents want to hear that. Communities want to hear that. Players, student athletes want to hear that. Administrations just want to sit there and go, well, we lost 14 tickets. What is it? $8, $80, $30, $92. But we might get your kid into college to where they can be successful in life and give you a donation 20 years from now that gets you jerseys, that build you a stadium, that finish the sentence any way you want. That's the difference. I'm not here to promote YSN. I'm not here to sit here. Oh boy, Munson's tattoo's out again. Says primetime is going to Canton Central Catholic. I heard. Well, Donnie, you heard wrong. Except you taking quit. I don't know what. That's not how you say. You're not speaking in full sentences. Primetime will be in East Palestine this week, as the Bulldogs will host Camel Memorial. Two teams looking for a win. And obviously there's going to be a lot of hype and hubbub about the Poland Canfield game. Here we go. 440 goal says 8 tickets versus 92,000 eyes. Seems like a no-brainer. I'm agreeing with you, boys. No doubt about it. I mean, when there's 32 games on Friday night, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be part of that. If there's 92,000 eyes on our games, and last Friday, so much so that it crashed the site, I would want to be part of that. I'd ask the question why our kids wouldn't want to be involved from that standpoint. Because we're a one-stop shop for everything from all the way up in the lake, all the way down to the river. And even breaking news, this weekend, we, the 440 and Goal Boys, myself, Richie Giuliano, and Quinn Pushkar, will be in Chicago, Illinois, doing the National Flag Football Championships. That's happening on YSN. We haven't said anything about it because we're still working through the details of it, but it is 100% happening. We've booked the hotel room. We're all ready to go. So we will have 5 games on YSN, the National Flag Football Championships, live from Chicago, Illinois, and we were chosen by Game Changer, Dick's Sporting Goods, the whole 9 yards, to do it on a national level. So we are very honored, privileged to do that. But it just goes to kind of show, LOL, from the river to another lake, from the river to Wrigley. I feel like, we played defense for so long, having to answer questions about why we do it, why do we do it, not split revenue with schools. And we did that. We did that during COVID. We gave schools 25%. Now, on the business side, there's a lot that people don't realize. We still have to pay announcers. We still have to pay stream fees. We still have to pay the OHSAA. We still have to, there's a million things that we have to pay for before we even get down to paying ourselves. And I'm not here to sit here and educate you on business. What I'm here to tell you is people like Jim Powers, who we had on earlier, pave the way for people like us. And there's not a whole lot of appreciation out there for guys like that. And I'm here to tell you that I do appreciate it. I mean, as much as I'll take the heat on this one. I didn't get along with Ron Potesta, Poe. We never really saw eye to eye on very much. I still respect the hell out of him as a broadcaster. Still a top-notch broadcaster who has a voice, who you instantly brings you back home. Bob Hannon, Dana Balish, Bill Castrovince, Mike Ackelson. I mean, you talk about people who are the home of this valley, who you hear their voice, and it no matter where you are in the world, brings you right back home. It was a little bit humbling the other day when I heard somebody say there was a couple names of YSN in that same fraternity. And that's when I realized, okay, we have something here. The kids right now, and for the last 6 years, the YSN voices are the ones that will be echoing in eternity for some of their wins, for some of the losses, for some of the games that you'll never, ever forget. And that's why broadcasting is so great. Why wouldn't you want someone at your game to just talk about it? Just kind of walk through it, to narrate it. And it's not costing you anything. We have a ton of advertisers who are willing to step up the plate and say, iSynergy, yeah, we love what's going on here. We love seeing our advertising, our logo going through there, because these kids deserve it. Missouri doesn't have a YSN yet. Chicago doesn't have a YSN yet. Cleveland didn't have a YSN yet. And now they do. The one thing I will tell you that I've talked with Jim a few times now is that we are so spoiled with sports here in the Mahoning Valley. Spoiled beyond belief. Think about the national champions, the world champions that have come from the Mahoning Valley. Sometimes we don't know how to handle being a winner. We won. We're winning. And I'm not saying because we have YSN. But what I love about this service, this opportunity, is that whoever wins a state championship next under the YSN banner will be able to go back and archive it and chapter it and relive it for years and years and years to come, as will their kids, as will their kids' kids, and so on and so forth. Create your legacy just like we have here on YSN. The voices of YSN will now echo in eternity forever. Appreciate that. Let's get to the Joe Dickey Electric What's Your Spark, presented by our friends over at Joe Dickey Electric. Hit it. There it is. It's Joe Dickey Electric What's Your Spark, presented by Joe Dickey Electric. Anything commercial, residential, anything electrical. Don't get zapped. I'm almost over this cough. I can feel it. It's fading. It's fading. Just hang with me, baby. Hang with me a little longer. I know it's just as annoying as it is for me as it is for you, I'm sure. So my spark today is preseason football. Especially, like, I'm not a big scrimmage guy. I know you need to have it. Preseason football stinks. Like, I don't know anybody that watches it with any kind of skin in the game. And it stinks because on one side of the fence, you have someone saying, well, this guy could get hurt and it could, end your season. If I'm a Steelers fan, TJ Watt gets hurt, Deontay Johnson gets hurt. You're holding your breath, wondering if your season is over before it starts. You see these guys get carted off and their seasons are over. If the owners didn't want preseason games, why do we still have them? Why do we still have them? So we replace one preseason game with a regular season game. Now we have 17 weeks, which to me makes no sense. It's an odd number. It makes no sense. It should be 18 games, 2 preseason games, and 2 weeks between preseason and regular season. Preseason is nothing but a money grab. You never know who's going to be playing. Are the starters going to be in? Most people are giving tickets away. It makes zero sense to have it. Let's just do away with it. Let's go to these practices. And I know people are going to say, well, they're swinging helmets at practices now, these combined practices. Aaron Donald needs to be suspended. Like, okay, fine. But at least we're not charging people other than, the price of admission to go to these combined practices, scrimmages. Like they try to treat these preseason games like they're the real deal. Nobody wants to see the undrafted guy who's never going to make the roster. Never going to make the roster. He won't make any roster. We're just trotting him out there and collecting money and the concessions and all that stuff. Poo-poo on the preseason. I'm over it. I'm done. Usually I can't get enough football, especially when it comes to professional. I'm done with the NFL preseason. Done with it. It is a money grab, and that is it. There's no good that comes from it. Absolutely zero, other than content for ESPN and the NFL channel. So I'm done with that. We'll talk more about the NFL, I'm sure, in weeks to come as we get closer to the season. But it has been an honor, a pleasure. I want to thank Jim Powers for stopping by the show here on this Tuesday. We'll sneak in a big show tomorrow, hopefully, trying to get some coaches' corners, and Richie should be here live from the studios. Until then, guys, a ton of games on the network tonight, volleyball and soccer. Make sure you're checking them out. Show some appreciation to not only the announcers for taking their time out, but certainly those student athletes and coaches and the communities that come out live at those games. My name is DJ Yoakley. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Ysn Power Hour, 3 to 4 on your sports network. YSN thanks you for watching this presentation of your sports.